So you're on the journey to find your art style. The problem though? All the advice out there is just so generic, it's just not helpful. But that ends today. Welcome to the Art Mentor. My name is Sean, and by the end of this video, you are going to have a step-by-step guide on things that you can actually do, hard advice that you can perform right after watching this, so that you can start to develop your art style. Are you ready? Now, there's three things that are really critical to this conversation I really quickly want to go over with you. Number one is that, yes, art style does take time for you to develop. You can't force it 100%. Number two, it's really important that you make sure that you don't think of yourself as statically defined, as you only make art just like this. And number three, you are definitely going to need to attack all of these things, and definitely not all at once, but attack them all, and so that you are going to step into the role of being the amazing artist that you were born to be. And it's going to start with this. Regardless of what you want your art style to be, you have to start with the element of realism, which is, how real do you want it to be? Do you want it to be simplified? Do you want it to be exaggerated? Do you want it to be semi-realism? Do you want it to be hyper-realism? That is what you want to focus on first. What is your level of exact realism on this? So here's a bulletproof strategy for this. Regardless of which one of those four you want to be on, or anything in between them too, you should practice doing the realism level that you intend to do along with other ones. So for example, if you're an anime artist, try doing the same exact image in realism. Also, if you are a realism artist, try doing it in a more simplified cel-shaded approach. By doing this, you're actually going to pick up a lot of really great skills. Everything is based in realism, so don't neglect that. Next, let's discuss line work, and specifically I want to know, how visible do you want your lines? Do you want them seen? Do you want them not seen at all? Do you just see a little fine trace of it? Do you color your lines? Do you have your line work is textured with special brushes or special tools? Are there some parts of your lines where they're thick and they're thin? Are they varied? How does line work play into this? Whether or not it's just something you use in the sketch phase, like I typically do, or if it's something that you're going to be using in the finished product, you need to figure out how you're going to be doing this. So again, here's what I recommend for you. Definitely try out different things. Try coloring your line art. Try using different textured brushes to see what type of a tooth that you can put on it so that it's not going to be the same. Try blurring your line art too. That's a really awesome thing for those of us that are digital artists watching this right now. And while you're going through this process, check yourself to see which version of it you like. Now, one of the biggest components of any great artwork, artists that you look up and admire, is how they use color. And specifically with that, we got to deal with two properties of it. First off, how colorful do you want this to be? How saturated in those colors do you want it to be? Do you want to be more on the Ross side where everything is just like glowing neons, everything's super bright and colorful? Or do you want to take a non-Western approach to it where everything is a lot more muted colors as well? A lot of artists, particularly Western artists, have a really brutally difficult time approaching things with muted colors, and it's something that I go over in all my videos. I got some links down below for you if you want to see some of this in action for you, but don't be afraid to use muted colors. So what color theories are you going to use too? So here are three of the most common ones that I definitely recommend. Number one is an analogous color scheme. This is basically three colors in a row on the color wheel. Number two, complementary. These are two colors directly across from each other on the color wheel. And then number three, split complementary. You'll see this so much in professional grade illustrations, and this is basically you start with a complementary color pair and add a color next to it. So try out using actual tried and true color theories on your artworks from here on out. Try all these out. So see what works for you. Now, a big one that a lot of artists talk about is, how do you blend your paint? How do you actually, whether or not you're doing it digitally on canvas or on a physical canvas, how are you actually blending your artwork too? And what tools are you using to do that? So for example, do you have a very textured way that your paint seems to blend? When you look at the colors, is there evidence of different textures and different material feels to it? Or do you just have that smooth as butter approach about it? Is it just nice and neat and clean across? Or do you have a gradiented approach where you can literally see like little stripes of color? So especially if you're trying this digitally, here are a few tips from me. Try doing it with just a standard round brush. Try doing it with a soft round brush. Try doing it with different texture brushes. Try doing it with the smudge tool. Try doing it with the blur tool. Try doing different things. Try different layer effects too. See what's going to happen as you're going to be trying out new processes, and see how that looks for you and how you kind of vibe with that. Now this next one is a huge mega giga tip. You ready for this? Make sure that you hit that like and subscribe button down below so that this content gets pushed out to more artists just like you that want to be better. Now, as we continue to move on, friend, here is the real gig advice though. Everything I'm going over right now doesn't matter unless you are being open to trying out new things and you're going to blend them together, because you may like the way that your line looks like this, the way that your blending looks like that, the way that your realism level looks like this. So it's really important that as we go through not only what we've been through already, but as we move forward too, friends, you got to figure out which ones you want to try and which ones you are really firm on. I like it like that. But however, though, don't be so firm on I like it like that you're going to be shutting down the possibility of what you will like in the future, like this. This next one is huge, and I talk about this all the time. It's actually my favorite part of any artwork, and that is texture. Are you a texture addict? Tell me about it down below, because I know I am myself. So here's a big thing you want to ask yourself, y'all. What textures are you using? Where are you using it? And why do you do it there versus not here versus right here? So you need to really lock down and figure out right now, why is texture important to you and where is it important to you? You got to figure out, and I definitely encourage you right now, starting from this day forward, experiment with applying different textures. This is the number one thing that most artists neglect, and once they try it, it really opens up floodgates for what they could do, because most people are texture phobes. If you're a texture phobe, also let me know about that down below, because I know how that goes. Now, a big thing that's definitely going to set you apart, that's going to make people want maybe your designs, or they're going to want to hire you for a project, is how do you do proportions? Do you want them to be pretty much all adult? Do you want them to be all childlike as well? For example, do you want to follow more of the Norman Rockwell, which is the real hardcore realism style, where everybody is exactly how they actually physically look? Or do you want to follow maybe a more stylized Trent Kanuga approach? Like it's based in realism, but it's got his own personal flair, its own personal way that he does all of his proportions. Or do you want to just go bananas like Studio Trigger and everything is just kind of whichever way that character looks great? If they are big and buff and strong, then they sure as heck look that way. It's gonna really set you apart, friend. So experiment with that too and feel out which way you like to go. This one's a doozy now. It's called brush economy. Are you familiar with this one? Because you should be. Whether or not you're a traditional artist or a digital artist, listen up. Your brush economy basically is how many different tools you're using in order to get the job done. Just to give you a personal example here, you're gonna look at my exact tool set. So these are all the brushes I've accumulated over years. I have at least a couple hundred of them, but I'm gonna be real with you, I pretty much only use 5 of them. And then I circumstantially use other ones when I need to, when I feel like it. So here's one thing that I recommend you do, and this is especially big if you're a digital artist, but you can do it traditionally too here. Every single time that you're going to make a new artwork, dedicate yourself to using one new brush. Or if you're just starting out too, download some custom brush packs. I recommend going on DeviantArt or other sites like that. Get some free custom brush packs. There's tons of really great ones there. And every single time you sit down to make a new artwork from here on out, use just one new brush. That will get you used to and exposed to using different brushes, and they're going to allow you to create different effects. It's going to give you a certain flair, and it's going to really allow you to step outside of that comfort zone and try out new things. Now, however, though, you can just say, well, I only want to use one brush on. All right, cool, bro. You can do whatever you want. But I definitely recommend that you try out just doing one new brush all the time. And then you're going to get to a point where you're like, I'm comfortable with this. I can fly through this now. And this is something that I'm personally doing right now. Have you ever tried that? Now, you can do this next one through a variety of methods and through a variety of tools, but I just want to ask you, what is the quality of your edge work? Because this can take a lot of different shapes and forms. Is it really smooth? Is it really crisp? Is it really messy and textural? So here's one thing you want to do in developing your edge work. Just ask yourself this one simple thing. What is in focus? What do you want people to pay attention to? And what do you not want people to pay attention to? There's a lot of different ways you can do this. For example, if you're going to be going into like heavy illustration work, I just did a video, I'll link it down below and show you right here, but I gave you some really solid advice on how to really level up your backgrounds so that your focus is on your characters and on your scenes happening. So there's a lot of different ways, a lot of different tools you can do this, but practice blurring your backgrounds, practice different line weights, practice using like the lasso tools, for examples. If you're a digital artist, do you avoid the lasso tools? Are you one of those people too? Because I used to be. And then too, also think about, where do you blur? Where do you smudge? So think about this in terms of how your edge work is going to contribute to what you're trying to do in the story you're trying to tell. Not to be ambiguous now, but we have to talk about your personal flair. Things that you do, little touches that you do that really help to make your design stand out. Now, here's a big thing about this. This can only come about as a cultivated aesthetic, meaning that through your labors, you're gonna develop and you're gonna figure out, you're gonna feel out, if you will, what feels good. So for example, with me, things that I like to do, I like to insert a mood into everything. I also like to play with really dynamic light sources. Like if you were one of my clients, you would definitely get like 2 or 3 different light sources out of me because I have a lot of fun with that. And I also like to play around with expressions. I also like to play around with super dynamic gestures that show a lot of intense action. Whether it's supposed to be a really insane battle scene or not, then that's something that I really want to help convey. So think about what your personal style is while you're going through everything that we talked about and figure out what your personal flair is. Now, here's another big tip for you. Make sure your personal flair fits in with the intended genre that you want to do. Just for example here, let's say that you have a My Little Pony style, but you want to do dark fantasy art. Your artwork might stand out in a bad way. Or maybe somebody's gonna like it every once in a while. But either way, think about what you want to do, what genre you want to do, and just think about how that style is gonna help it and what flair you can insert into that that's gonna be different from other people's, or at least very uniquely you. Have you ever considered this, or do you have a personal flair element that you want to share? Drop it down below for us. So this is a key clutch element, which, to be honest with you, everything that we've just gone over, the development of your art style and all the elements that I've encouraged you to use and experiment with, it won't matter unless you tell a story. So for you as an artist, here is the major element. You have to figure out, how do you tell a story? How do you insert a narrative into everything that you do? Because this is the one missing element from just generic artwork where people just go, boom, character, done. And that's all, folks. You want to compel people to keep coming back to you, to see more of what you got, to see your growth, to see your development, to see you building that art style, right? You have to figure out, how are you going to get somebody to connect with what you're making? So the way you do this, friend, is you got to play around with things like mood. You got to play around with lighting. You got to play around with all the elements that I talked about. But especially, y'all, you have to figure out how everything compositionally fits together so that it tells a story, so that another human being looks at that and says, you're awesome. I love that person's stuff. I'm going to hit that follow button. I'm going to subscribe to them. I'm going to pay them money. I'm going to support them on Patreon. Or at the very least, type a comment and say, I love your art style, because that's what you want, right? Now, everything that we just went over doesn't matter at all unless you're gonna be open to experimenting, to stepping outside of your comfort zone, and you trying new things. But y'all, I got tons of other great tips like this, secrets that pros don't usually tell you, but I will, and you can see it all right here in this video. Go check it out.